Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see everyone here again.
Exciting to have you all here and diving into the subject of sacred sites. I want to encourage everyone, drop in the chat where you're from and maybe what sacred site you've always wanted to go visit or you feel really connected with or drawn to. And I encourage everyone to just tune in to the transmission here today. It's going to be with one of our friends, Edwin. He's an amazing soul, has so much knowledge about sacred sites. He's going to be sharing on some of the ones he's most connected with, how consciousness activates and how the sites can activate us with remembrance and how we can use the energy of these places. So tune in with that in your heart, wherever you're drawn to connect to the grid of the earth. And we're all here for that elevation of humanity's consciousness, right? And elevation of the frequency of the earth. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you all. We're going to turn it over to Edwin here in a moment and just let him take it away. But I know Isla has some things she wants to share before we dive right into that.
Amazing. I just want to say welcome to everyone and welcome, Edwin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just being available to share this absolutely incredible knowledge that you're going to be sharing with everyone here, to bring awareness to what these sites are and what they do for us within our DNA and within our soul. I first met Edwin in 2022. Very spontaneous gathering that occurred in Adam's calendar in South Africa with a few other soul family. And I was just blown away by the knowledge that he had within him. He is a descendant of this area as well. He keeps the knowledge and he shares the knowledge. And part of his mission is to share that through his throat chakra and bring all the awareness there is to not just the sites in South Africa, but how they all relate to Egypt, Stonehenge, and all the other sites across the whole planet. So I just want to say again, welcome, Edwin. Welcome, everybody else. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Just stepping into the awareness, what this planet and what the codes hold for all of us here. Welcome. Take it away, Edwin.
Awesome. Edwin, you should be popping on now. And everybody else, just enjoy, open your heart, soak in the codes of remembrance that he's here to share with us. Welcome, Edwin.
Thank you so much, great people. I always would like to refer you as the tribe that's gathering the rain clouds. And I'm also part of this journey of sharing the knowledge. My name is Edwin Chitapi, and I'm actually a spiritual tour guide and a knowledge keeper of a certain specific ancient heritage site, which has become the talk of the planet, which they call Adam's calendar or Inzalo Yelanga, which basically or translates to the birthplace of the sun. And this is one of now well contested and uncertified, but known through some scientific research that has been done to the site, that it is one of the oldest megalithic structures on the face of our planet, and it is known as the birthplace of the sun. And I am also a gatekeeper of that particular site, and I am happy to be with you today, everyone who is on this platform, to share my knowledge about this ancient heritage site, which has become very popular with visitors, spiritual people, tourists, people who just want to resonate with the very ancient frequencies of the land. And this ancient heritage site is actually the one that I'll be mostly speaking about. Not to say that in South Africa there are almost 303 heritage sites that one can actually visit in the south of the Sahara. This is below the equator, which is Southern Africa, from Zimbabwe to Botswana to Namibia to Zambia and to Mozambique and then South Africa. You have many heritage sites which are also certified as a spiritual, very spiritual sites, which are dotted in the south of the Sahara. And I would just be talking about, mostly referring to Inzalo Yelanga, the birthplace of the sun, where the Sanusi or the alchemy scientists were actually initiated at that specific particular site. However, as I would like also to take note, and everybody here to take note, that in order to be in tune and in the divine element, one actually has to know what a heritage site or a sacred site like Inzalo Yelanga is. And a lot of people do not really know the definition of a sacred site. Now, the definition of a sacred site will comprise of one, two, three, four, many things that you would actually be able to pick up and also translate and transmit into your consciousness as I give you the definition of what a sacred site could probably be. Yes. So a sacred site is an identity. So you can mark those keywords as you just go through this definition that I'm trying to give you here. And it is the identity of our cultural lineage structure in terms of the humane perspective, forming holistically based belief systems enshrined or encircled around spirituality, deities, and ethereal shamanic dharma and cosmology, which means that we have cosmology also enshrined in this definition, because there is seen cosmology and also unseen cosmology. And it goes on, but those are factors that actually create a sacred site. And meaning to say, Southern Africa becomes a gigantic spiritual sacred board of ancient heritage sacred sites that are at the African area and part of Africa. And also we have a lot of other sites that resonate with Adam's calendar, which is also known as Inzalo Yelanga. And being a sacred board, it means that we've got a lot of places that people can actually visit. And these are all 303 sacred sites. And these include sacred shrines or altars that are also part of these heritage sacred sites. And we also have burial grounds, very ancient burial grounds that are found in Southern Africa and specifically South Africa. And we all concur and agree that South Africa is the cradle of humankind. I think a lot of people, when in mainstream, would tell you that South Africa actually has been certified by many other bodies through scientific research and other researches that have been done on the continent, that South Africa is actually the host to the cradle of humankind. When you go to one of our areas which you can visit in Johannesburg, we've got Stekfontein Caves. And when you go to Stekfontein Caves, you're going to see a lot of evidence of the beginning of civilization. That actually is a pointer that South Africa is the cradle of humankind. And we also have obelisks, and which are dotted across the land, which people don't actually really know what they are, but actually were left by ancient civilizations on our landscape. And we also have rivers, which are very sacred. People don't know that sacred spaces, rivers can also be part of the sacred spaces that actually refer to, that make Africa to be actually be a gigantic spiritual sacred board. We also have mountains that we have in the part of Southern Africa, and I can name quite a number of them, including Inyangani Mountains. Some people have heard the works of Credo Mutwa, where he speaks about the Chitauri and the disappearance, the underground aliens, which are known as the Greys, that are actually having habitats in ancient tunnels and channels and caves that are found under the Inyangani Mountains in Mutare, in the northern part of Zimbabwe. It's one very special sacred site that one can actually visit. And we also have forests. We've got caves like the Sudwala caves. The Sudwala caves, which is one of the oldest known caves on the planet that one can actually go and visit. I was laughing and we were discussing today. Just today, I was at the caves with a guest from France, and we were in the caves, and it was very fascinating. But I had to do some pointers in that particular cave. And we know that on the outside of the cave at Sudwala, it is known as the Dinosaur Park. So I was asking the guest that, do you know what it means that this pena, which is just outside the Sudwala cave, is known as the Dinosaur Park? And they were very puzzled. And I said, no, it's because this cave is not actually a cave, but it is actually a petrified structure of a very gigantic species of an extinct animal that could possibly have been a dinosaur. So it's just mesmerizing. That is exactly what it is. When you get into the structure dome of the cave, there are many pointers to certain elements. When you know your biological eye is open and you can actually pick up certain principles of the alignment of fascia structures that are in the cave, the esophagus of this gigantic creature, and also the symmetrical alignment of the mouth grid beam that you are also going to see there. And you are also going to see a lot of things that I will point out to those who are going to come to tours and actually want to see what the caves are all about. And you just see the structure is just fascinating. Tendons and fascia structures and veins that are all dotted inside the cave. And this is something that you can actually visit. We also have rain-making queens in Mojaji. People have heard about Mojaji. These are sacred shrines, also making up these sections of sacred spaces that we have. Rain-making queens that are also here in the south of the Sahara, which is Southern Africa and specifically South Africa. And people can actually attend certain ceremonies that are conducted by these rain-making queens, including the ceremonies of the Inkatha, which are there, and they can also learn about the genealogy and the history of these queens who are virgin queens and have been there for thousands and thousands of years and millenniums. That we are so fascinated to note that nothing of this nature has actually been recorded, mostly in mainstream, because we would also want such type of information to be researched by scientists and also geologists and archaeologists and also people who are interested in knowing shamanic principles and also research on alchemy science, very ancient alchemy science that people can also research on. And we also know that we have the largest cluster of ancient stone ruins that we find here in South Africa. And these ancient stone ruins are also here in South Africa, which you can visit. We've got fertility circles, and we also have healing circles with different frequencies. That one mystery that people can actually tap into sound resonance. And a lot of people have not learned much about sound resonance, but we have got amplification devices on our landscape that actually are a pointer to very ancient civilizations which could have passed in our landscape. And a lot of debate has actually been running rings around why these ancient heritage sites have not been researched and why they are not spoken about. But actually, South Africa, having this cluster of ancient stone cities, which cover an area of almost 500,000 square kilometers of land, and highly concentrated in a place called Waterval Boven, where they have not yet been disturbed by human activities like farming and other elements of road construction and construction that has actually distorted our landscape and actually created a pathetic scenario on our landscape of the devastation of ancient heritage structures that could possibly be an eye-opener to the modern civilization that many other civilizations could have passed on our landscape and left what we call the fingerprints of the gods, which are dotted across the entire planet. And we know that there is a lot of other things that come into our mind when we talk about ancient sacred spaces and heritage places that are around the world. We have heard about Machu Picchu, we have heard about Gobekli Tepe, we have heard about Nabta Playa, we know Egypt, the Great Pyramids of Giza are also to be noted. We have also noted that more other structures are being actually unveiled as modern science and research begins to look down into the ground and use other very advanced machines to start searching for evidences deep under our earth and also through processes such as stratigraphic strata analysis that is also under the oceans. We find that there are pyramids under the oceans. We also find there are structures which look like buildings which are under the oceans. And science and spirituality, as it works hand in hand, we find that hidden information is beginning to be exposed to the world. And in this exposure, it causes an unprecedented pandemonium of factors when people begin to want to know where these sites are actually located. What is this that they are suddenly finding on the landscape? And they begin to record and get fascinated all over the world as these things begin to become exposed to the modern civilization, which is also flabbergasted to say, is it that we are not the only first element that have actually stepped on this planet? And we know also from the records of Coptic records, we also have the records of the Sumerians who are said to probably have begun to write and document the knowledge of what could possibly have been a very advanced civilization, which we believe could possibly have left these fingerprints on our landscapes of the pyramids, structures that we ourselves cannot emulate in modern day engineering and construction. And we still wonder what and who build these structures. And it is a bone of contention, I know, and there's a lot of debate around certain structures as to who could possibly have built and actually set up these structures, because even our modern engineering cannot emulate or focus its construction methods on these structures and actually succeed. So this is why we have a lot of people now waking up in their consciousness and asking questions as to what are these things that are littered all over the place. We also have the giant footprint, which is also here in South Africa, which is a marvelous pointer to certain analysis of humanoids who could have been also walking our planet and could have survived on our landscape and on our planet for thousands and thousands of generations. And people have talked about the debates about the Nephilim, the giants who actually could have been the ogres who left their footprints on our landscape. And we have such site, which is here in South Africa, and it is known as the footprint of Ningizimu, as Baba Credo Mutwa would loved to call this footprint. It is a very authentic footprint. And when you visit this site, you are going to see that it is embodied or engraved in granite rock, which is also an intrusive igneous rock. And you can see that granite is very hard, but you find a footprint that is actually immersed in granite rock. And you would ask questions because you would say granite will be the last place that you would find as a footprint of this nature. And it is a very authentic footprint. When you analyze it, you can screen it with the infrared cameras, and you can screen it with laser beams, and you can screen it with anything that you want to screen it using modern technology, and you find that it is a very authentic footprint. And all the ingredients of a footprint that has been immersed in wet sludge is actually there for everybody to actually see. And for years, people have debated, is it possible that the giants could possibly have walked this land way before we, modern civilization, could have seen the light of day? So this is questions which have been asked about the footprint and actually how it got or managed to get into granite rock. But there are many theories that can come, and we have a lot of things that people don't talk about, and some are debatable, things which people are asking questions about, and people can actually visit this sacred space and actually resonate with the frequencies, probably of the giants and the Nephilim, those who once walked these landscapes. And we have seen in research that in some books we find researchers referring to men who were 3,000 ells tall, and 3,000 ells was the measurement that we believe could have been almost to the height of a kilometer. So 3,000 ells would probably be the height of 1 kilometer in height. So you have such a gigantic man or woman standing at 1 kilometer in height, and it will be very mesmerizing. And well, in our modern society, probably unthinkable to have such a gigantic humanoid walking this land. So we've got this. We've got also this place that people can actually visit, including the fertility circle. The fertility circles are actually the circles where people who could not have children would actually go there for childbearing ceremonies, where they could be attended by the Sharmen and Shah women who could actually administer childbearing methodologies on people using their different shamanic skills, and probably also the consciousness and other elements that probably we need to go deeper into scientific research about, and organic structural medicine that they used to actually induce fertility in women and men who were barren. And that was very fascinating, because in modern terms we usually think that it means that they are barren for life. So we see that someday in modern and they are all dotted in Southern Africa, evidences of that are.
Hey everyone. It seems that Edwin might have had a little connection issue, and he dropped off the Zoom call.
He says it's been completely flooded and raining there in the area. So I think he will just reestablish his connection and jump right back in when he's ready. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some of the questions here and see if we can get some of them answered, as we know the sites well as well. Not as well as Edwin, but we've at least visited quite a few times. Let's see what's there.
The caves. Are any of the caves crystal, and if so, what different types?
That is a best question for Edwin, but yes, he has mentioned before that there is crystalline structures inside. I believe quartz in the Sidwala caves, yeah. But it is all formed over time. As he was saying, it's actually not a cave, it's an actual dragon. It's a petrified dragon. And when you go inside of that cave, you can actually see the structures and the rib cage and the veins and the vessels. Hey, it looks like he's back. Let's let him answer that question of the.
Hey, Edwin, is your connection back?
Yes.
Okay,
I
we can
think
hear you
I
now.
got lost there. Yes. What was the question? The question.
While you were out, we just thought we'd answer some of the questions that have been in the chat. And one of those questions was if some of the caves are crystal or have crystals. And yeah, so touch on that and then dive back into where you were going.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Crystals are an element that is found in blood. And it's not surprising that these caves would have crystals. Actually, talking about congealed blood and when large volumes of energy is intermingled with water and also ions and formulates crystals. And that's where you find also formations of many silica states and iron that you also find inside the caves. And congealed blood is some of these elements that also crystallize and form these structures that are in there. And along the fascia dotted lines, you actually find that this is actually a petrified body and mud fossils. A lot of mud fossil research has just started, and science is putting energy into the research of mud fossils and actually to expose what could be much more intriguing concepts, other different species that could have just been petrified in mud and forgotten. And we think these structures are actually rock or stone. And this is actually not stone, but actually body parts which are strewn all over the place, underneath the mountains, underneath deep mining channels that we can go to. I've seen other channels. You've got chrome mines and exposing a lot of crystallized elements of fossil structures that are coming from very deep underneath the ground. And people are now surprised to say, what is all this? And we also are having to also deal with cities that are being exposed, cities on top of other cities like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It's a city that was found underneath our modern cities, and some of the elements are petrified. We also have examples of petrification in Pompeii, which is in our modern era, and Pompeii exposes us to things that we had not ever thought of before. And this is immense and intense volcanic eruptions and petrification that took place in a certain space in Pompeii. And today we are now being given these remnants of petrified bodies of humans and structures of animals petrified into rock. And where this was the cause of the pressure of volcanic material that actually caused this to actually take place and to happen. We then go on. I was actually referring to the fertility circles that we have here in Southern Africa, the symbols, which have got symbols of the womb of the women. It was created or designed like the symbol of the womb. And it is actually here on the ground and can actually be visited. And we know that Baba Credo once actually talked about it, and he was referring to its energy, which is the energy of Inzalo, the Inzalo, which means the meeting place between God and man, which is the greater consciousness of the womb chakra, which is a feminine portal, which actually carries the infinite energy of human translation or human nation, and also procreation of humans. This is the direct line in which we actually come onto the planet. and it is through the feminine grid. So you are going to see me when I move to, which is Adam's calendar, which is the birthplace of the sun, where the Charmen and Shah women were actually initiated. They talk about the metaverse and they talk about the great earth mother, because everything that is installed or instilled in our consciousness has actually been activated through the principal portal of the feminine grid. And even him, Credo Mutwa, Mutwa actually means the great earth mother. And as I go to also the site known as Adam's calendar, which was actually rediscovered in 2003, and surprised many people that it is similar to the Stonehenge, and that is known as the Stonehenge of South Africa, and it is actually quite an intriguing known about this site, that it existed. But Credo Mutwa actually knew about this site because it was a very ancient sacred shamanic site where the Sanusi, the very advanced alchemy scientists, were actually initiated at that particular site. And the last initiation, according to Baba Credo Mutwa, he was initiated there in 1937, and up until today, no other ceremony has actually taken place there. But it's very fascinating because it is one site that has never been talked about in mainstream. And even if you try to find out more about this site, it is not really available, because a lot of people are aware that such a site actually exists on our planet. And so that becomes one of the most fascinating sites that has been rediscovered in this millennia, and that is Adam's calendar, which is also known as Inzalo Yelanga. Some people refer to it as Adam's calendar, which is a recent term that was actually given to the site, and the Charmen and Char women of that place actually called it Inzalo Yelanga, meaning the birthplace of the sun, where Baba Credo Mutwa talks about an encounter with the other world, which is the cosmology I was talking about, which is the unseen cosmology, the alignment of the stars and the alignment of the moon and the alignment of the sun and the cosmic arena, that we are not just the only species that is on the planet, only inhabiting this space, but beyond the galactical realm, there are many other ancient civilizations that are dotted in our planetary surrounding, and they also part of galactic core, and they can actually visit our planet and go in and out of our planet, probably without us even noticing or seeing, because they have a very advanced technology that they use to come onto the planet. And this is what he was trying to talk about in his many books that he has actually been writing. He has got about 9 books to his credit, and you can actually find these books online, and you can actually read about what Baba Credo Mutwa has actually written about the knowledge of our galaxy. And this is knowledge that is very fascinating and links up very perfectly well with the knowledge of the cuneiform texts that were deciphered by Zachariah Sitchin when he was also talking about the arena, the galactical arena, and that probably we have other beings that in this cosmology that we actually can encounter in our consciousness and out of our consciousness as per se. And this is Adam's calendar, which actually has the clitoris of the earth, which is actually found at Adam's calendar, which was actually used in the ceremonies of the great earth mother, and which were actually used to mate the energies of the sky and the energies of the earth. And today, still the resonance of that frequency is still felt at the calendar. A lot of people are rushing into this calendar to actually see why this place has a huge electromagnetic field that hovers around this place, and where this great energy is actually being derived from. Is it coming from the sky to a certain particular point on the planet, or is it coming from the earth and forming a spiral vortex into the infinite cosmology, which is the galactical arena? And what type of a machine or device Adam's calendar or Inzalo Yelanga could be? So we have a lot of questions being asked, and these questions can only be answered through visiting this site and beginning to awaken to the fact that there were other technologies that were actually instituted on our landscape, probably by different, what we might call alien species, because we don't really know what their names are, but we know that we have had researches, scientific researches on ancient civilization structures in the sea, places like the Bermuda Triangle, which have mesmerized even scientists as to what actually is happening in this specific grid of the earth. And people are asking questions. Could it be technology that was left on our landscape? Could it be sound resonance grids that were used to create sound resonance and polarity on the earth and actually create energy? Is it hypersonic instruments that we know nothing about? Is it technology that was left on our landscape? So people are asking about all these things, and scientists are the ones probably who will ultimately have the answer in the future when they link spirituality and science to actually resonate in parallels and also create the knowledge of this, actually expose this form of nanotechnology that suddenly we have been consciously been awakened to. And we now understand that this was an ancient site, and being an ancient site, people are beginning to visit this site to resonate with the frequencies, healing frequencies, holistic or healing frequencies that's actually amplified by these structures. And when people come and converge at the center and do drumming ceremonies and get into link with the ions, natural ion phenomena that happens when the earth actually releases naturally the ions that actually create these healing methods and healing effects on our realignment of our chakra points and our bodies. A lot of people would then want to say, why should we not just say sacred sites? Why not just read about them and then leave it at that juncture? But the thing is, we cannot smell a coffee when it is on a television screen. That is one thing that we should be wary of. Coffee cannot be smelled when you get the smell of coffee on a television screen. So there is need to actually get to a sacred site and visit a sacred site in order to align yourself with the energetic grids of the frequencies that actually released by the site itself when you go into resonance with that structure or the sacred site that you would have actually visited. And a direct visit or contact to sacred sites for frequency resonance is profoundly transformative and enriching, and also particularly enlightening. When you visit these ancient sacred sites, you experience also your spiritual growth and connection with the divine nature, and also connection with yourself. A lot of people are asking questions about themselves in modern civilizations to say, actually, who am I? What is my role here? What am I here to do? And why should I be on this planet? Yes, we receive a lot of questions in that nature as people try to find their footing and to the role that they can manifest in terms of servitude to the planet, and also to save the planet, and also to save humanity, as in save humanity, and also as in SEIVE, RVE, serve humanity. So those principles should also be enshrined in our reasons to visit these ancient sacred spaces that are not only here in Southern Africa, but dotted across the entire world. And that is one reason we have spiritual energies can also be experienced at these sacred sites and tapped into, as most sacred sites hold very powerful spiritual ancient energies that can be felt. Some people actually feel these energies that are at sacred sites in the temples and ruins and mountains, allows one to tap into ancient knowledge and ancient cultures. And these ancient knowledges and cultures are actually in these megalithic structures, which also form part of the library of consciousness, human consciousness. And at one time, I was talking to another person, and we were just jocularly saying the best place for God to hide himself is actually inside a human being, because human beings, we don't look inside ourselves. We think that God would be found elsewhere. So this is the reason why we need to critically look inside ourselves, as the documentation of ancient scriptures actually states that what is within you is much more powerful than that which is from without. It is a law, it is a statement, it is everything that you should actually understand what it means. And people, that is very intense spirituality, where when you understand that God would actually hide himself inside you, because you as a human being, you do not actually look inside yourself to actually understand yourself. You can see that even the temples of Apollo are written, know thyself. And if you can get that in the fundamental aspect into your head, then you will know that there is something that you are overlooking in terms of the principles of your journeys to your rise in consciousness and knowledge systems and structures, especially when it comes to personal transformation and removing blockages in these supportive ancient sacred spaces, the entire chakra, which are the 7 conscious circles that we actually embodied in our system. We also broaden your understanding of the world. Sacred sites can broaden your understanding of the world and yourself and planet and universe in general. When you visit the sacred sites, you are also going to have this ancient knowledge, written and unwritten, especially the unwritten knowledge, which is engraved in the rock. As you saw, the Sumerians always loved to put this knowledge on stone, and a lot of people would just take it as backwardness to actually be writing on stone. But what I think, when the messages were written on stone, it meant that these messages are the messages that are the truth of the matter, and nothing will come thereafter that would beat the knowledge that is actually engraved on rock or engraved on stone, that show us that there were very advanced civilizations which once walked our planet and gave us the knowledge that we use today of mathematics, the geometry that we use, and also construction, and also writing methods and different languages and that we actually use across the planet, and also learning specifications and learning methodologies. So this came from ancient knowledge, and ancient knowledge is very vital for us to actually tap into and understand where we come from, where we are, and probably where we are going as a human species. So that is tapping into this grid of knowledge is actually a matter of a challenge in which you have to make journeys and actually come to the continent and actually resonate in these energy chambers which have got amplified frequencies, some going to as much as 325 gigahertz of frequencies when the sun crosses the equator in certain dimensions and alignments to the stars. Well, visiting sacred sites can also be a unique window into ancient mythology, spiritual practices of ancient cultures and traditions and customs. People talk about mythology, myths, things that are real and make believe, but when you actually visit these ancient sacred spaces, there is also an experiment and experience that you are going to actually have in actually deciphering the truth between mythology and the truth of the matter. And most of the truth has been actually hidden in mythology. And if we want to decipher a lot of things that are called mythology, you are going to find that modern humans are actually going to have their consciousness raised and starting to critically look at looking at certain concepts and evaluate certain concepts that have come from the past, because we ourselves, we are not inventors. We like to call ourselves inventors of knowledge and inventors of industrialized mechanical machines, and we have invented new technology, we have invented all these things. But according to my perception, I think we have never invented anything on the planet. If the book actually stipulates that there is nothing new on this earth, and that is the truth of the matter, because we ultimately become inheritors of the concept. And when we are inheritors, we are just repeating things that were actually introduced to us by the great earth mother and principle of our upbringing and our raising of our consciousness. And today we think that we have invented something, and yet it is merely inheriting that which we have been given as a gift by creation. So the head chemist of the mind, and when we look at our faith, we are also going to see that it's the subconscious mind instantly picking up a vibration and translate that vibration into spiritual equivalent. And when that vibration is translated into spiritual equivalent, it transmits infinite intelligence into us. And that infinite intelligence is what we call knowledge. And this knowledge is actually brought about when we visit ancient sacred sites and spiritual spaces to pray and do our meditations. Then we have to be present in person in order to actually accumulate this knowledge. So Adam's calendar, which is Inzalo Yelanga, is actually centered or created along the feminine energy. And a lot of people talk about the sun. And yes, the sun, saying the sun gives us energy and the sun gives us all this. But in principle, the sun cannot be so effective without the moon or without aligning to the moon, which is the mother. And the mother and child analogy is actually seen and transcribed at Adam's calendar. You actually see that there are 13 monolith stones which actually create the calendar. And this follows the principle of the Julian calendar, which has 13 months. And the 13 monoliths are actually there at the calendar for you to actually visit and see, which is the representation of the Earth Mother, which is a singular cycle of 28 days for each and every month before the distortion of the calendar actually came into effect when we have new introduction of the Gregorian calendars, all to do with ceremonies and their own holidays that were instigated by the leaders in Rome. And these could possibly have changed this Julian calendar to only 12 months. So we now have evidence that the calendar actually marks the moon cycle and it actually marks a star constellation, and the star constellation of certain specific alignments of stars that are in the galaxy and which are also aligned to the calendar. And this is very interesting and fascinating because it also marks the equinoxes very perfectly, and the shadows also in alignment with the sunrise and also the sundown, and the monoliths making such shadows and marking specific ceremonial pathways, which are breath and spiritual pathways that are actually found at the calendar itself. And that alone actually amplifies a certain frequency which is so magnified and very powerful, and creates this quantum entanglement that is very specific at that particular site, that a lot of people have been mesmerized by the energy and are beginning to also visit Adam's calendar, Inzalo Yelanga, and also which has been built and structured similarly to the Stonehenge. Now, when you also go to the Stonehenge, you're going to see that this same type of rock that actually builds the Stonehenge is the same type of rock that builds Adam's calendar. And the same type of rock that builds the Stonehenge is the same type of rock that also builds the ancient stone circles that we have here in South Africa, thousands of stone circles that are on our landscape, and also builds the same structure which is known as Great Zimbabwe Ruins. It's the same type of rock. So you're going to find yourself wondering, why did they use this same type of rock to build all these ancient civilization sites? And thousands of tons of just one elementary singular rock was used across the planet to build these ancient heritage sites. So it's another bone of contention, is which we ask the geologists, we ask the researchers, we ask the archaeologists and the scientists to come up with this evidence and try to explain to us why this is a singular phenomena that has happened, and mesmerized research to say, why was this type of rock actually used? So we have also a lot of debate centered around the geological aspect of the type of rock that was used to create this sound resonance. And we now know that probably this plutonic gabbro that was used at dolerite could possibly be a rock that can actually amplify sound structures. And we know Tesla has been talking about sound manifestation through vibration and the concept of frequencies, and creating resonance and polarity on electromagnetic fields and creating energy from the earth. But that is a debate for another day. But we know that if we visit these sacred sites, there is a lot of advantage that we are going to gain by visiting these sites and actually resonating with the frequencies that can actually realign our chakra perspection. And we have in archaeoastronomy and astrology, you have also the months which we follow, cycles of the months and the days of the week, when we have Sunday, which is actually a day that represents the cycle of the movement of the sun, and a Monday actually representing the cycle of the moon. And when these two elements face each other, they give us the genealogy of ignition of energy that gave us the sound stream of the procreative genes of our X chromosomes. And we go to Tuesday, that was actually the representation of the element of the cycles of the galactical arena, which represents fire. Wednesday, which is Mercury, representing the air. And Thursday, which is Jupiter, representing the spirit. And Friday, the representation of Venus in alignment with water elements, and also Saturday, which represents the elements of the frequency of the earth. And when these converge, the elements form into one, we have a galactical plane of frequencies of creation, which we assimilate to the God particle. So you will see that this astrology is something that is intense and immense in understanding the cosmic arena and also who we are as a human species and where we probably come from and where we are and where we are going to newer spaces. So definitely as to the elements of procreation, and we are still on a journey in which we should actually visit these ancient sacred sites, and it will probably be just the time that we have on this platform that is very limited. But when we actually visit these sites, we are able to actually experience and be in tune with the frequencies of the elements of the earth and also the elements of the water, the elements of the forest, the elements of the fish and the insects, the animals, resonating as one element to create a universe that is full of abundance. And we should actually be in harmonious resonance with the earth so that we can procreate together and also save the planet from destruction, because the way we are going as a human species, we need to retrace and revitalize our footsteps and our energies and the consciousness of the ancient, in which they were able to manage the cosmic arena, both in the seen and unseen cosmology, and how they actually created a platform in which all elements would resonate together in a singular harmonious resonance structure, so that the earth would actually be able to be saved from utter destruction. So we need to revisit those ancient footprints, and the knowledge would be unveiled to us through the context of the stones or the cuneiform text, or that which was left inside the stones by the ancient civilizations for us to follow and for us to manifest and return our souls to greater, higher consciousness. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be not taking much of your time here, because I see that there's other people who have questions, and we can actually entertain that as of now going forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Edwin.
Thank you, Edwin.
Appreciate it so much. We've got maybe a dozen or a little less and some really good questions that we'll go through. Thank you all for dropping in the questions. We'll ask these over to you, Edwin, and those who ask the question, you'll know it's your question. And then Edwin will be able to unpack a bit of an answer. Hopefully we'll be able to get through all of these in about the next 20 minutes before we wrap up.
I just want you guys to know that if your sound has dropped off during his presentation, there will be a replay available in the app. And we will also add some imagery so that you can see what Edwin is talking about as he's talking about the footprint, because there's beautiful photos that he sent me.
Just on that footprint, I got to go there and see it in person. It's absolutely remarkable, some of these places, when, as Edwin was talking about, when you go there in person, the place activates and decodes the remembrance in our DNA, in our body, in our consciousness field. And it brings you into resonance with the ancient knowledge, and it unlocks the wisdom within. When Edwin was saying that the God, the divine, is within us and it hides there, what's been encoded into many of these sacred sites in terms of like a calendar with the time and the 13 months and all of these things, when you go to those places, it creates a shift of remembrance. Towards the end of this, I want to share one of my personal stories about the first time I went to the stone circles, and actually before I got to the stone circle, some of the things that happened in terms of my own remembrance. But I'll share those towards the end. Let's dive into some questions. There's one question here. As a foreigner or visitor to sacred sites, what advice do you have when hiring a guide, and what should we look out for? I just want to highlight to everybody that Edwin is one of the or the last remaining guide in his lineage for the local region that he's been talking about surrounding Mpumalanga and the birthplace of the sun, etc. If you want to go on a journey to these sacred sites, there's two things to look out for. One is if you want to go on a solo journey, you want to connect with Edwin directly, just reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with him and you can coordinate that if you want to go on a personal trip. And then also later on this year, we will be doing a 14-day journey through many of these sacred sites in person with a group of people. Edwin's going to be guiding us to these locations to do meditation, to tune in, to activate consciousness and receive the energy of these places and have your own experience, as well as go way deeper into the learning that we've just scratched the surface of here and that we're going to be touching on over the next couple of months. We're going to be doing this type of an event once a month, by the way, here in the community. For those of you who didn't see that, it's a repeating event every couple of weeks. Just look for it next month and come back to the next one. But if you do want to get in touch and go to one of these sacred places, I highly recommend working with Edwin. Or if you want to come with a group, let us know and we can talk about what that would all entail and coordinate that. You can message us on the Ateawa platform or reply to any of the emails that you've gotten from us about this Zoom call here today, and we'll get in touch on the details. But Edwin, if you have any comments on that question about when looking for a guide to sacred sites, coming from another place and going to a new area of the world, whether it be there in South Africa or any sacred site in the world, as a guide that guides people to those sacred places, what should people really look out for when they're selecting someone to guide them to these locations?
There's a lot of things. Remember, there are guides across South Africa, a lot of guides who are in South Africa, but specifically spiritual guides of ancient civilization sites are not many. You wouldn't find many because this is actually a different sort of principle of guiding that is required. It's actually something that is much more unique in alliance to the space where you want to visit, because guiding people can be guided all over the place. But this is why we have formulated this platform, because what type of a guide do you need? Do you need a guide that will take you to the animals? Yes, we have guides that can take you to the Kruger. We have guides that have been trained to take you into hiking mountains. But the guides that actually fundamentally look at spirituality and ancient heritage, very few, if almost close to none. So this is the reason why we have created this platform, so that you go through this platform and you'll be actually well advised as to how you can actually get a specific guide for the specific or visit that you would like to actually do. This is actually more on the heritage civilization tour and cultural tours that we actually do. And I am actually looking specifically, it's a certain specific site that is very rare and has not actually been talked about in mainstream. And this is, it is not just an ordinary tour or a visit that you're actually looking for, but it is so much more specific to ancient
Edwin, your
civilization
sound
and
dropped off
heritage
again.
sites.
So let's double check the sound.
So just while we wait for him to get back and get the sound back up, on if anyone wants to hop out and hop back in. But just to touch on what Edwin has said about finding a guide, this is exactly why we are having an event like this today, to bring awareness to these sites, and where you can also find a channel to find the guidance or the people who actually go to these sites with the spiritual inclination incorporated in it. This is the same thing we do when we go to Egypt as well. We follow the channels there so that we can actually go and experience the sites for what they were made for. and have the meditations there and hear the frequencies and tune into the frequencies and feel it. So this is one of the reasons why we are having an event like this, to bring that kind of funnel here so that we can find the people who actually have the spiritual side to these sites as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing it from a conscious perspective, I've gone to many of these sacred locations, and you'll have a lot of the tour guides have to follow a narrative, whatever the narrative is that's been established. This is particularly prominent in Egypt, for example. But then you'll find these gems of an individual who they're willing to go beyond some of the rules per se at points, and they're able to have deeper conversations. They know there's a deeper truth, and they're not afraid to embrace it. They've had their own experiences, like Edwin has had with his work in Southern Africa and all of the sacred sites there. Edwin, I think you're back now.
Yes.
Let's keep going. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
And then
Yes.
another question that's here was the connection between Orion's belt and the Great Pyramids.
And the calendar.
The connection between Orion's belt, the Great Pyramids, and the calendar. If you could expand on that, Edwin.
Yes, the Great Pyramids of Giza are actually aligned to the Orion's belt. Great Zimbabwe ruins has got certain structures that are also aligned to the sunrise, to the Orion's belt, and also you are going to see that Adam's calendar is also aligned to the Orion's belt. So there are many theories that actually are very debatable as to why all these structures are aligned to the Orion's belt, and why is it the Orion's belt that could actually be of influence to these particular sites. But I think when you look at intergalactical travel, there are also GPS coordinates that are very intrinsic, and a lot of people can debate about it and look at the GPS coordination of the Earth, and also what is above and what is below. Probably it is something that we don't actually really or truly understand, why these structures are aligned to the Orion belt. But simple reasoning that some other people would actually be looking at is probably there was intergalactical travel, which when the Earth crust begin to actually move, and because for thousands of years GPS will shift, the poles are going to shift over time, and this would actually probably enable to mark the sighting of that leeway in which we would have certain species who came onto the planet find a coordinate that is reverse mathematically calculated to the original point of the shift of the galaxy and the shift of the Earth crust, so that it will be easier to recalculate the coordinates when this phenomena or event actually happens. So there were some scientists and mathematicians were arguing over this factor, that why would all these structures be aligned to the Orion belt? And it probably comes to some sense of suspicion. It's all suspicion. It's not probably what we are thinking, but the shift of the GPS coordinates, if it changes, realignment of those coordinates in a mathematical calculation to have the original alignment to the intergalactical travel that could have taken place over thousands of years, and actually finding the correct coordinates to go on and off the planet. I'm not saying that's the correct thing, but I found it just also fascinating why these structures are also And also there at Adam's calendar, you've got the monoliths of Aunilam, Aunitak, and Mintaka that are actually there at the calendar. And you also find that the pyramids are also aligned to Aunilam, Aunitak, and Mintaka. And then when you find the coordinates of Great Zimbabwe, again, you find certain structures aligned to Aunilam, Aunitak, and Mintaka. And you say to yourself, why has this been the case? But it's just speculation. I think more research would be fascinating, to continue research and actually to find specifically why these sites have actually been aligned to the Orion belt.
Awesome. Thanks. That brings a lot of clarity, I hope, to those who asked that question. I wanted to touch on another question here. When can I come to experience these frequencies? I believe this was asked while Edwin was talking about the frequencies generated by some of the stone circles. There is a journey with a group. I mentioned it a moment ago. Should be happening sometime in September around the equinox. That would be the equinox, right? Not the solstice. Yeah, the equinox. So get in touch with us in the app, send us a message or send us an email, respond back to one of the emails and just say, I want to come to one of these events, to come to South Africa and come to the stone circles and experience that energy. Let us know you want to put that on your travel itineraries for the year, and we can coordinate what the details will look like to join us for 14 days to go through many of these locations. Another question here that I think would be great to touch on, Edwin, is, or did we already do this one?
You did actually speak about it, but if you could just expand a little bit more on how the calendar is a solar and a lunar calendar.
Specifically, yes, I can actually explain it to say it becomes a solar and a lunar calendar and a lot of other things that I can say. But generally, we've got certain specific markers at the calendar that marking the moon rise and also specifically marking the sunrise. So when you are actually at the calendar, the shadows of the stones move in a certain specific alignment to each other. When the sun rises and when the sun sets, you actually see that when you stand on the eastern side and you look westwards, you are going to see that it becomes a lunar calendar. You actually count the grid of the rise of the moon on the western alignment with the 13 monoliths that are in place there. But when you come to the equinox marker and you look eastwards, you are going to find that it becomes a solar calendar in which the sun begins to cast shadows. The monoliths on the east begin to cast shadows onto the monoliths on the west and create a timeline, which you can actually put a sheet of paper on the rocks. And then this is a practical element that you actually need to see in action when you come to the site, and we actually point out specific markers to say, can you see this marker? Can you see this shadow? How it is interplaying on this shadow? And when you put each singular alignment on an hourly process protocol on the rock, you see the shadow following that marking, which actually gives you a 6-hour timeline cycle on one type side of the rock and a 6-hour timely cycle on the other side of the rock, which gives you specifically 12 hours of sunlight that you can actually see, especially when it's on an equinox. And also it starts to decrease as we go into winter, like this specification. Now to the 21st of June, we are going into winter, and the number of hours of sunlight are continuing to decrease.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's absolutely fascinating to see how accurately created some of these ancient places are. And for those who don't know, the calendar that Edwin is talking about, Adam's calendar in South Africa, is the oldest working ancient calendar in the world. It still works. It still keeps time. It's all there. It's had its disruptions through the years, but it still keeps time, unlike many of the other ancient calendars on the planet that have been moved or relocated or altered in such a way that they don't still function. Going there myself, years ago. I just want to share this story real briefly because Edwin was talking about how we receive the knowledge that's encoded there and activates knowledge within ourselves. So several years ago, I was preparing for my first trip to South Africa, and Isla had some of the stones from some of the stone circles. And we were on a Zoom call like this, and she would hold up one of the Zoom calls and share it with me. And in that moment, I lost all the ability to speak in English. And the only thing that would work with me was light language and frequency. And then she set the stone down. And when I couldn't see the stone, like the modern programming in my brain would come back. But when she held up the stone, it was like I just went into this ancient space of knowledge and awareness. And similar things occurred when I arrived there and went to the stone circles. The activation of energy within myself was profound and life altering, to say the least. Tuning into these spaces with the meditation to bring forward what is within you. And this brings me to the next question on our list, which was asked about, are you listening to yourself? You don't feel like you're enlightened enough to teach yourself, when Edwin was saying that this divine knowledge is within you. And I'd like to get Isla's comments on this as well in a moment. But we are all encoded with the same source energy that flows through everything and everyone. We each have a different way of expressing that. And that's what makes you, me, and everyone else them. It's what gives us our uniqueness. It's a unique expression of the same source energy. It's there, but most of the time we're not listening. And when we feel like we can't trust ourselves enough to lean on our own understanding within, what we're saying is that I am not part of the divine. I am not part of source. Therefore, I cannot trust myself. Therefore, I cannot trust the creative force that is within me. And we disconnect ourselves from it. Now, this happens a lot through the programming that we go through in our life. We're programmed not to trust our intuition. We're programmed to only trust learned and memorized information that is repeatedly forced into our brain. So we only trust this cranial thinking brain and what it can learn from an external source. We're taught to trust people in places of authority, governments and school teachers and things of that nature. What is really interesting here is that when we trust an external source of energy, you open yourself up to be heavily manipulated if that external source has ill intent. Now, that's not to say learning from someone else is always bad, because we can learn a lot from people. But one of the ways to tell who you should learn from is being able to trust the inner intuition. If your intuition and you're trusting it fully, you will know with resonance in your heart if someone you're learning from is being authentic, if they are bringing forward truth, or if they are being underhanded or manipulative or things of that nature. So really leaning into that intuition and the knowledge within yourself is where so much power can come from. Do you have a comment on this as well? I think you wanted to share.
Yes. So just expanding this a little bit more, our bodies is literally the most ancient technology that we have with us right now. And you know how we have these systems in our body? Let's give an example, like the inner cannabinoidal system, that one.
The cannabinoidal system, yes.
We actually have a part of that sacred plant within us that connects us to the earth. When we tune into, say, plant medicine journeys or stuff like that, the same goes with our bodies. And when we enter these ancient sacred sites as well, we have a puzzle piece within our DNA that is encoded with the knowledge and everything within us when we enter those sites. Now, you can do this by yourself as well, just with your body, and tune in from the other side of the planet as well. This is why we always have these events online when we're there too. But it is about stepping in and starting to trust your inner guidance, your inner intuition, and the way that you can discern whether it's true or not is your inner guidance will be true if it's neutral. If it's neutral guidance, it will never tell you what to do or where to go. because that will be a polarized opinion, right? The neutral aspect within us will guide that intuitive feeling of, yes, this is right for me. This is where I choose to be. This is what I choose for myself, right? If there's a polarization to that, you can allow yourself to center yourself and then step into that centering. And that's where you will receive the neutrality as well. So it's about stepping into trusting yourself, trusting your own voice that comes from within yourself. And this is also where you can feel the guidance to where you're intuitively guided to go within these sites as well across the globe, because they're everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those activations are super powerful. I'm going to touch on a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up for the day. I think that Edwin's connection has dropped again. I don't see him here. So we'll check and see if we can get him back on for one more moment before we wrap up. But somebody's asking if there's a map that is showing these sites. I will try to find out on that. I'll check with Edwin. I'll see if there's any sources that we can maybe put together for such a map. And we can post it in the Lightworkers Worldwide space of the Ateoa community. So in the same place where you found the Zoom link for this event, we can get that posted if we're able to source one that seems to be and feels legitimate. And we'll check with Edwin for that part of things. Somebody was also asking why we can't go back to the real calendar, the 13-month calendar, which goes by that 4-week cycle of 28 and a little bit of a sliver of days for each month. And while our entire world has been steered to use a month system where we got 31 days in one month, 30 days in another month, and 28 days in a weird month in February, this all creates a form of like back and forth. It slaps you around when it comes to the energetic attunement of the body and the mind and how we synchronize time. Keep in mind, time is a sequence. It's a sequence of energy in particular arrangements. I talk about this in some of my other classes. So when that is continually getting jarred by our current calendar, it does create its inherent disruption. Now we can tune out of it, but it'd be pretty difficult if you went to go on a 13-month calendar and try to run your life on that entirely, because so much of the world isn't doing that. So it might be difficult to schedule things, connect with people, and organize your life. So one of the things we do in the 13 chakra quantum shift exploration and reality creation process masterclass is actually tune our chakras to this pattern. Using the 13 chakra system, you can work with the chakras once per month and create a very interesting pattern. Or you can also work with the chakras, one chakra per week, and that will bring you to 13 weeks. And by the way, 13 weeks is the distance from one solstice to the equinox, from the equinox to the solstice, and so on and so forth. And there's 4 of those 13-week chunks per year. This is why we have 52 weeks in a year, 13 weeks in a season, 4 seasons broken out of those 52. And this then all adds up to also those 13 months as well. So this is fascinating things to really tune into and understand in terms of how these work. Yes, I believe the Mayans, Yvonne, they are also on this wavelength. So there's a couple of ancient calendars that represent this. And then there's a couple of modern calendars that have distorted it in a few different ways. Rather than looking at the modern calendar and fighting against it, which is a tendency that we might want to do, oh, this is so bad. Just bring yourself into natural resonance with the cycles of nature and allow yourself to be a living expression of nature's calendar cycles. And then it doesn't matter what date you say it is of the month or what day of the week or any of that stuff. Doesn't matter. Now, there are bridge moments. We've found those. This is at times where we'll celebrate like 11/11 portal days, it's like November 11th or something like that. There are bridge moments where even the distorted calendars create large moments of synergy and alignments of energy that can correlate with some of the older calendars as well. So I like to say this a lot. It's a Pleiadian expression that we're here to walk both worlds, both the world of distortion and the world of alignment, to be in both places. And this allows us to have influence on the world of distortion while we can live and bring our essence of being from the world of alignment. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Any comments on that part about the calendars?
Let's see. I think Edwin's back.
Is he?
Yeah.
There he is. Perfect. Let me put him back to spotlight. Good to see you back, Edwin.
Yes.
We don't have you on camera. It's got a black screen, but we can hear you.
It's I'm charging it's on charge, so
No worries.
yeah.
For those who don't know, in South Africa, they have this thing called load shedding, and power is often a challenge at different places, especially out in the rural areas where Edwin is, up in Waterfall Boven, right near all of these sacred sites. So tuning back into, I think there's one more question that I really wanted you to take, Edwin, and that is a question about the protocols or observances or methodologies or modalities of the sacred South African sites. The question is, what advice do you have for observing protocols or avoiding taboos? And are there any common protocols or taboos that should be avoided or followed across the sacred sites within South Africa to respect the ancient culture that's there? What should someone know when they're coming to these sites?
Yes, that's a very brilliant question, whoever asked us that question, because protocol is very important to maintain the sacredness of the sites, whether it's in South Africa or it's in Mexico or it's anywhere else in the world. We should learn to observe all protocols pertaining to ancient sacred spaces, because they are ancient healing spaces where people trust to get holistical healing and resonate with the energies of that ancient space in honor of all ancestral protocols. So the place like Inzalo Yelanga, it's in a nature reserve. And inside the nature reserve, it is governed by the protocols of laws pertaining to forestry and fishery department. And we should actually observe all laws pertaining to that the process of governance and also the sacredness of the area. So we have animals that are also inside there. The Blue Swallow Nature Reserve, we should also take note that we've got an extinct species of birds, which the blue swallow, which was becoming extinct and is also part of the nature reserve, which should also be protected. People should not play music, loud music, or bring firearms into that space. And people should also observe the sanctity and sacredness of the space by also not leaving waste material on the land, because that would actually be a sign that something is actually gonna miss. We should actually honor that, and we should also not dig up roots or species of plants which we find at that specific site. Before you can take anything out of the site, all you leave at that particular site are your footprints. You don't leave anything else in those specific sites, because that's generally what I can say. But most of the laws pertaining to entry, you will actually be told at the entrance of the gate, and you'd be entrusted to adhere to these processes so that you would not be actually removed from the site, because we also have security who are guarding these places, and we also have patrols for the safety of visitors in these certain spaces. So all this should also be taken into consideration, and everything would be flawless. And once we enter those sites, we just observe the sacredness of the site and not be found wanting, so that we can actually all enjoy that happen at that particular site, and also the meditation. We come in different frequencies. Some people just come as tourists, some people come as healers, some people come as spiritual people. So you'd actually know that their frequency are different. So we shouldn't make noise for those who are actually in their meditation spaces. And we also give each other chances to get the knowledge and also come onto the space and make sure that there is no violence or castigation of other people's religions, because we are not there for castigating anybody or judging anybody. We are only there for specifically our own spiritual reasons to the sites, and that is also part of the process and part of the protocol. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Edwin. Just on that, Yvonne has just asked the question, is photos allowed in cell phones? Yes, it is.
Yes, it's allowed, yes. But not taking other people's photos because we have found
Yes.
people's photos on social media and I'm seen smiling behind a rock, and people say, who was this smiling behind this rock and what were you doing there? And we just take our own photos, yes. I think that will be the best. Make sure that you don't put other people, because you'll be sued to the horseshoe if you take someone else's picture, which is not allowed. We should respect the privacy of other people when we are also there.
Exactly.
So largely this essence of how we all choose to walk on our path in love and respect and honor and integrity of one another and of each other's belief systems and the varying religions and cultures that come to these places for growth and expansion, and to honor that across how we show up, not leaving our litter, like he said, only leaving our footprints behind. This has been absolutely a wonderful and beautiful time to spend with you all today, and lovely hearing from him, Edwin, with all of his knowledge. We'll do this again in about a month. I noticed that one of you were commenting on that it's interesting that today is Easter. Today is the equinox. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, where I'm at, it is in the spring equinox, but there where Edwin is at, it's the fall equinox, because they are headed into their winter. And when we selected today's date as the timing for having this group, we forgot that today was the equinox. We did not have that on our mind. It was like, let's pick a date on the calendar. This Sunday was the date that was free in our schedule and in Edwin's schedule, and it all just lined up. And then it was days later, we have this realization. The universe just, without our knowledge, coordinated that to be on the equinox. Go ahead, Isla.
Amazing. Like we said before, if this is something you would like to explore and you feel drawn to come to South Africa and experience these sites, then email us, reach out to us on the app. It's everywhere available. If you're registered here in the app and have received the emails, you can simply reply to those. Also, there was a question about Egypt as well. There is a plan for a trip in November. And if you are interested in doing that, you can also reach out to us by email or message us in the app, and we will put you into contact with Lisa Armstrong. She will be arranging that, and it will be a very different trip this time around, because it will be about all three the pyramids as well. And then also it's going to be completely self-managed. You just get there. It's about following that intuitive impulse and allowing yourself to just show up. That's what it's about.
She's talking about, rather than a tour, it's all about an energy activation. It's going to be a super powerful activation this November. So get in touch if you want to come be part of that, whether online or in person. Particularly email us or message us if you want to be in person. If you just want to attend online, it will be posted here in the app. You'll get a notification when the exact time is nailed down. And then you can just hop on a Zoom call like this. For those who want to participate online, it's very easy. And then in September, we should be doing a journey through all of the sacred sites that Edwin has been speaking about today across South Africa. Most notably, the Adams calendar and surrounding stone circle locations. And then if maybe you're a person and you're like, I just want to go on my own solo journey. I don't want to go with a group. I just want to go on my own solo journey or something like that. And you want to go to South Africa and you want to go connect with Edwin and have him be your personal guide to connect into some of these locations. we will get you in touch with him. We'll send you his phone number and his information where you can connect with him personally and schedule that if you're planning your own trip there. So stay safe, everybody. Edwin, do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
Thank you, everyone, for giving us your time to tune in and actually learn about the various sacred sites that we have in Southern Africa. These are sacred sites that have not been researched on most of the time because archaeobotanists have not been looking at the sacred sites of Southern Africa. But thank you so much. And we wish to be meeting again in a month's time and also meeting again in September for the ancient knowledge seeking journey that we will have in South Africa. It's the first biggest event that is going to take place on this platform, and we invite everybody to tune your roads and get to South Africa and experience the ancient knowledge of the birthplace of the sun.
Amazing. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.